Double check that. Good. All right. I think we're good to go. Perfect. Okay. Everyone, welcome to the Wolf Crypto Podcast. Great to have everyone here. Today, we have Shibtoshi, founder of SquidGrow and SilentSwap. The Billionaire, you've probably seen him. There's tons of stuff on pretty much all platforms now. He's one of the only people who's broken through to the Instagrams and TikToks. He's pretty well known. A lot of people have seen the mask now. But we got Shibtoshi on the space or on the podcast today. Shibtoshi, it's great to have you, man.
Hey, thanks to be here, guys. And, thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And I don't do many of these on-camera interviews, but for you, happy to do it.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked to be here. I really appreciate making some time. So I see the SquidGrow community on YouTube especially is going hard right now. So big shout out to all the SquidGrow and SilentSwap people in the crowd. I see a ton of people in here.
I can actually see it. Yeah, I can see it. There it is.
There you go. Wow, they really
Let's
showed up.
Guys. Thanks for the support.
Literally. Okay, James, well, I think there could not have been a better segue into literally the first question, which is why are all these people showing up? What is SquidGrow? What is it you're building? And then we can kind of dive into a little bit more of yourself. But I think it'd be great for people listening if they're not familiar with the platform yet.
Okay, so SquidGrow, I'm the CEO and founder of SquidGrow. We launched in June of 2022, and it kind of came about, kind of just trying to provide a safe place for my friends and family originally. I've been in crypto since 2011, and, everybody close to me and near and dear to me has kind of seen my lifestyle change substantially throughout the years. And as hard as I tried to get everybody into crypto, nobody had the interest in it. And it was about 21 that some of my close friends started dabbling in crypto. And, they found like every single honeypot that was essentially out there, pink sale, DX sale, jumping into everything, just losing money. And it was around this time that they started talking to me about doing my own project. And I had no desire to ever run a crypto. I had no idea how to code a smart contract. And with some time and some of my friends continuing to take big losses, they started wearing me down a little bit. So I gave in and I took a 6-week Solidity course online. Still can't code smart contracts to save my life, but I do try. I'm good for a couple things. But like I said, in the original days, it was to provide a safe place for my friends and family. Obviously, at that point in time, I did not know my community. And now, moving forward, my goal is to provide a transparent and safe place for friends, family, and my community. In the it's so crazy because, thinking back to day one when we launched, we had 88 community members at that time, 88 holders. And before the migration, most recently to just Ethereum, we had a total of 23,000 holders. I'm not entirely sure where we're at currently. The claim process is still ongoing. But, it's so crazy that, you launch a project and you get to know everybody in your community, almost like, extended family to an extent. Now, I understand that everybody is attracted to crypto for monetary gains, and I have no issues with that at all. But during the process of, being on this ride together, you get the opportunity to get to know each other to an extent. And, it's kind of cool to like see like the positive impact that I've been able to make on some of these community members' lives. And, I think we have a long way to go still. We've got a lot of uphill battles still, but, just the journey together. I mean, it's been, over 2.5 years at this point. And, I set out to just, try to make my mark on the space. And, I feel like I'm working in the right direction. I don't think that I have necessarily done that yet, but I'm definitely climbing my way up there.
Definitely. And, one thing that probably surprises most people, and you've been through this story a bunch of times, I know, but made a good deal of money investing. And then instead of hanging out, you chose to pretty much go the opposite direction and take on, one of the harder industries. For a lot of people, there's a much easier route to $5 million in 3 weeks of marketing. I'm thinking a lot of the NFT projects and stuff. You chose to go this direction with it. I know you mentioned, you wanted to have safety for your friends and family. It's sort of expanded a ton since. You guys have a lot of things coming up as well, but I'm curious on why you ended up going that direction.
Yeah, so one part of the story that I didn't touch on is obviously, how I came up with the name. So I'll briefly touch on that. Starting out, like I see, meme coins as kind of like the entry level into the space. And at the time, I was looking for two things that were being talked about a lot in the crypto space. Squid Games, the TV show, was very relevant in the world, and there was a token called Evergrow launched on the BSC chain. Actually, my friend Sam is the CEO of that token. But I took the two together and kind of picked and choose and put them together for SquidGrow, and that's how I came up with the name. Um, and I know starting out, like we were a meme token. I'm going to say we didn't necessarily own our intellectual property rights. We did have to have lengthy conversations with Netflix, and that's kind of when we overhauled our website and kind of pivoted from our logos, and we've done that several times. But starting out, we were a meme token, but I always had ambitions to build utility for the project and add value to the space. So for me, what this is about, it's, anybody that's familiar with SquidGrow knows that in the beginning days, we were a tax token, and 100% of that tax went to liquidity. So, quite often we're asked, where's the funding come from for marketing or exchange listings or whatever it is. I self fund it. And starting out, I knew what I was signing up for. And I knew that there was going to be people that were depending on me to continue to get up each and every day and push forward. And, I knew what I was signing up for, and I embraced it. And, that aspect of our funding definitely sets us apart, because I've been fortunate enough in this life to do pretty well for myself, not only from Bitcoin but some other plays. Obviously my name Shibtoshi comes from um, me investing into Shiba Inu August 1st of 2020, 5 hours after launch, where I dollar cost averaged over the course of a couple days 37 Ethereum into my position. And that wallet went on to be known for the $8,000 to $5.7 billion, but it was actually more realistically close to $13,500 around the time I think Ethereum was like around $300.
Mm.
So it was about $13,500. But that's where the name comes from, and I'm a big supporter of SHIB. I love their army. I love their community. And, when I started SquidGrow, I was trying to essentially replicate that. Without a good foundation of community, you essentially have nothing, because your community is going to be there for you day in and day out, regardless of the charges up, down. They're going to be, the ones going out day in and day out, spreading the message and awareness of what it is that you're doing. If you drop a utility project, they're going to be the first ones to utilize that utility, give you some feedback so you can critique it, make it better before you push it out. And we utilize them quite often when we're building different utilities. So it's been a blessing, and we have a good community foundation. And I don't think SquidGrow would be what it is today without that support from them.
Yeah, man, get a ton of people in here still. Just the chat's going absolutely wild in here. Man, huge shout out to all the SquidGrow and SilentSwap people out there. By the way, building in this space, how has your experience been in terms of like you come up against some of these behemoths who have been building? I have no idea what the environment's like. Are they hostile towards you? Is it like really hard to sift through the muck, or what's the experience been like?
Um, I haven't had too much of a negative experience. There was a project that is doing something, or did something similar to what SilentSwap is. Obviously, we have our differences. We're non-custodial, trustless, and decentralized. They're more of custodial, running, swaps through APIs. But in the beginning days, without getting into too much detail, we briefly spoke about acquisition, and obviously, it wasn't a good fit for me. But at that point in time, we could not figure out how we could build SilentSwap to where it would be non-custodial. Everybody told us it couldn't be done, and this owner of this project, he severely doubted me. He said, I don't believe IBM could build this. I'm a million percent sure that it can't be done, and 99.9% sure if it is done, it won't work properly as intended. And we kind of just left that conversation off, with me telling him what I was going to do, and we set out to do it. And that was a little over a year ago. And earlier this month, December 9th, we rolled Silent Swamp out exactly as intended. Obviously, perfected it along the way, and we are non-custodial, trustless, fast, and very cheap. for what it is that we offer. And I think, privacy solutions are, now becoming front and center in the space. We got people like Tucker Carlson talking about privacy and what cryptocurrency is not private, so we've got bigger people actually starting to take notice. So I think, coming up, there's a strong emphasis on privacy, and I think we happen to just time it just right with our application and rolling it out, because we are primed for this market. We have, in my personal opinion, a better solution to anybody else that's out there if you value privacy and you value the ability to actually maintain control over your assets every step of the way, instead of just transferring them to a third party with the "I promise you I'm going to route them to where you want them to go." We've gone above and beyond. We've gotten United States legal opinions deeming that our platform is compliant. We implement OFAC and AML on the platform as well. So, there's that gray area that, is kind of like the unknown, because we don't really have black and white of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And, that kind of comes down to like the regulatory framework that's out there currently. But with all the attorneys that we work with, we've made sure that we were miles away from that gray area. So we just tried to go above and beyond to just make sure that we were compliant, because I have done well for myself in this life, and there is no utility worth building that is worth jeopardizing, not only my community, but also my freedom. So we just try to go above and beyond to just make sure that, we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. And I'm very happy with how SilentSwap turned out. It wasn't the easiest of builds, but shout out to my lead developers, Cal and Sup Doggy, and also Aztec from LDA. Aztec is the one that introduced us to Secret Network, and Secret Network is the privacy layer that we are utilizing for SilentSwap. And without all these things kind of falling into place, there's a good possibility we might not have been able to achieve what we have achieved. And it's just, sometimes things just line up perfectly, and you're able to, achieve what it is that you set out. There's obviously, in building in the space, there's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of people screaming that it can't be done, and obviously there's a lot of impatience. Right, building things that have not been done definitely take time. They're not done overnight, and I think the expectation of a project rolling out utility in a couple weeks, I think that stems from these projects just trying to check the box and say that they've rolled out a utility, and they do like a white labeled solution, some kind that's mediocre and the same as like everybody else's. When building something that's never been done and definitely unique, it takes some time. I would have liked to get SilentSwap out a little earlier, but we took our time with it, and we valued all the feedback that we got from the beta testing and all the team testing that we did, and we've made it the best that we could for V1. And we learned a lot during that process, and we're utilizing that going into building V2, which is going to be a strong improvement upon V1. So it's just a revolving door of just continuous work. I've not necessarily, had any strong negativity from other builders in the space. There's more than enough room to go around. Obviously, I'm the type of person that I never try to throw shade at anybody that's kind of in our sector, kind of doing what it is that we are doing. But in my personal opinion, there's nobody in the space doing what we have done with SilentSwap. And, to my knowledge, that is true. But, for the most part, everybody's pretty cordial as far as the big builders in the space and other companies. So, we help where we can help one another out. There's been numerous situations where we've been in contact with big protocols, and just originally setting out trying to see how we can utilize what they have going on. They get into discussions with our developers, and our developers actually start giving solutions to issues that they have. So it's kind of like, they help
Nice.
us, we help them. And that's been my experience in this space. So it's been a very positive so far when it comes to the building aspect of things. So no complaints on my end.
Yeah, a couple things. I was don't even know which direction I want to go. Maybe we'll start with this, and then we'll come to SilentSwap. A couple features about SilentSwap that are pretty interesting to me. But in terms of building something that hasn't been done, can also sometimes take a little while. There can be periods of time that just take forever, and you don't have many updates to have. Community's got to stay intact. got a pretty thriving community here. What are two things? Like, what are some of the secrets? And then B, how much does the branding of the gold mask, the bling, like the super nice jewelry, like how much does like that brand image play into the conversation on maybe a business angle as well as a branding angle online?
So as far as the community, like I spoke a little earlier, I put a strong emphasis on my community. And one thing that I've realized through frustrations that my friends in the space have had is when they're taking a position into a project, it's the lack of communication, the lack of the access to the people that actually have the answers. Normally, you get passed off to a moderator if passed off at all. So, going into this, I made it very clear within my team. I wanted to make sure that we were always reachable. Now, we might not always respond to a message instantly, right? Because, my entire team gets backlogged with messages, but I make it a point day in and day out to go through our messages. And if there is something that is like serious there, not marketing proposals, we respond to those messages. And that is how we've been able to actually maintain and build upon our relationship with our community. And I like to think that I have a good relationship with a lot of my community members. I segregate. I have a bunch of folders on Telegram. That's normally where we are primarily focused, and I segregate everything in different folders. I have my SquidGrow family folder, and that's usually the folder that I send community members that I communicate with, most often. So those messages don't get overlooked. I get a notification when I have a new message there, and I've instructed my team to kind of do something similar. So, obviously my team doesn't message first. That's a security thing because there's a lot of impersonators out there in the space. But, the community members we do communicate with, we have a good rapport with. And I think it just comes down to transparency. Obviously, there's a line with transparency, right? Because, I'd love to sit and like, funny story on SilentSwap. Originally, we had anticipated the build taking 4 months. It took almost 11 months. So, but just thinking back, learning from, past mistakes from other projects, if I had spoke to my community and said, hey, Silent Swap is going to be live in 4 months, but yet it took 11 months, I've now misleaded everybody. So my philosophy on, when talking to the masses is I don't give timelines. I try not to give expectation of when things will go live because things change, right? We get to a point and we realize that we have to do something different. That takes time, so I think what it comes down to is just communication and being active. Primarily I'm really active in Telegram. It's hit and miss on X. I do try to get over to X a couple times a day to check my stuff, but primarily I'm on Telegram, and I'm always, even if I'm not typing anything out in the main chat, I'm always there reading along. And I try to stay very active. And for the for the majority of my team, they are the same way. So I think as far as trying to keep morale up during the time of building, there's a level of transparency you just convey to your community, hey, what we're doing is not easy. What we're doing has not been achieved before. And that's maybe not the case with every utility. I'm referring mostly to SilentSwap. It's a first. So, you know, just try to just communicate the best you can, and sometimes that doesn't really fit into um how the community member, or a particular community member, the timeline doesn't work for them, and they move on, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously everybody's in this space for monetary gain, and we make relationships along the way, and there's no hard feelings. People pull profit or whatever it is they do. I actually encourage it. I do encourage to do it respectfully, but that's not my place to really to dictate that. But I've always had a strong emphasis on liquidity to market cap ratio, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that. We've got decent liquidity for our market cap size. We just had a pretty decent run up last month, so it thinned us out from about 7% to about 4% currently where we're at. But liquidity to market cap ratio is a big thing, and so that goes back to providing a safe place for my community, because you know, being able to realize your gains that you might have in a project, you have to have the liquidity to do so. My situation with Shiba Inu, not that I would do anything malicious to that community, because I'm a big supporter of them. But there's no way I could have realized $5.7 billion in gains
Yeah.
with Shiba Inu. The after Vitalik, dumped. Sold his tokens. He took about 95% of the liquidity with him, and it's never been the same since.
Mhm.
Um, but just try to be as communicative as you can with the community. There was another part of your question, I kind of lost track of that. Do you want to
It was
mention
the
that again?
it was maybe on the mask and the branding around that
Okay.
and provenance online and how much that has
Okay,
to do with your
so
growth.
obviously, due to my notoriety, I'll say, in the space, and the investments that I'm known to have made, and the money that I have at my disposal, there's a security risk there for me, I believe. Obviously, you got some big guys out there like Michael Saylor and other guys that are fine with showing their face. I am not. My biggest priority is obviously protecting my friends and family. And if I was to let everybody know who I am, that's a direct connection to them, and it could very very easily turn into a negative thing. So at a point in time in the very early days, I wanted to, I'm anonymous, but I didn't want to be like the type of anonymous where you're either only a voice on a space. I wanted to have a presence. I wanted to be able to interact. I wanted to be able to go to events and shake hands of my community members. I wanted to be able to partake in that. That's part of the journey. And very early on, I started working with a mask maker, and we've had a couple versions of the mask. The first couple, or the first two, were plastic. The first one was multicolored. That was the first version of the Shibtoshi mask. The second version was gold plastic with holes, and then we got the version I have currently. And we've kind of built upon that. But as far as like the jewelry and stuff, I'm just really proud of my branding and what it is that we're doing. So I wanted to represent it. And Richard Hart kind of gave me the idea. Not that I know him personally, I don't. But he has a hex pendant and chain, and it's a little underwhelming in my opinion. So I figured, if I was going to do it, I was going to go, all in with it. So, started working with some jewelry designers, and had the pendant made,
Wow.
and, got some nice little
Nah,
engraving
look
on
at
the
that.
back, with some rubies, and, the chain, and then eventually the ring, you know, and I'm
Awesome.
working on some new pieces now because we just recently changed our branding. So got
Mhm.
to phase these out, but these are always going to be OG. But, it's just kind of, the gold mask and the jewelry kind of go well together, I think. So I think it was a match made in heaven in that regard. So I'm not really a blingy guy in real life. So it's kind of a way for me to kind of like be a little different. I'd never
Yeah,
be
yeah.
caught dead walking around as myself with like jewelry and big gaudy rings. But um it's just part of it, and I think it's been received well. Especially going to different events, showing up with the mask, and just being able to meet and greet everybody and chit chat. Like, I think it's received very well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's alluring as well. People are kind of like, what's going on there? You mentioned the branding switch up. Is there anything you can speak to about that?
Well, we've already publicly made the change. But obviously, in the early days, this was our logo, right? Um, it eventually phased to this. In the early days, we were kind of infringing upon Squid Games, so we had to change the logo a little bit. We worked with them. We overhauled our website, and there came a point in time that we were pivoting. In the beginning days, we started out as a meme, like I said, but we always had the ambition to
Yeah.
have utility, and we've been building that utility through the bear market. But although I always want to hang on to the meme aspect of it, because I think meme culture is a big thing in the crypto space, I wanted to kind of portray that serious side with the utility. So it's like, I like to refer to us now as a meme utility token. So I just had to pivot a little bit to a little something a little more serious. And when we actually migrated our BSC and Ethereum contract to the new Ethereum contract that we're on currently, I didn't want to launch that contract with the new logo, so I kind of sidestepped. So as you can see here, I kind of went with this logo, and this little squid actually is currently was on the face of our original logo. So I called it kind of like a half step. We hadn't finalized our new branding yet at that point, but it was important to me that I didn't launch the new contract with the old logo. So I wanted to kind of half step it. And
Gotcha.
after we finalized our new logo, obviously we were sitting on it for a while, and then it came down to building the new website with the new branding. And as we started getting close to that, right around the time that we went live with SilentSwap, I unveiled the new logo, and I think it's a nice professional taste. I think it's been received well. um, but it's just kind of playing into the direction that we're trying to go. We're trying to hang on to our meme roots, but we're also trying to have that serious side of us, and our name Squid Grow will always give us that ability. We have a character in our community that's created by Mr. Gallier. Squiddy is the character's name, and he was a community member, and he came up with Squiddy, and I really appreciate that. I've always loved the rawness of his designs and the storylines, and I like to say that Squiddy is our official like little mascot. So you'll see on X from time to time that we've got little characters running around and interacting, and
Hmm.
I know Squiddy's been interacting with Litecoin because they now identify as a meme, and
Right.
so, it's that the meme culture allows us to kind of have the best of both worlds. We have the serious side and we have the playful side, and that's what I was going for. So I've been real pleased with the new branding and the new websites. So yeah, if
Yeah, I
you
was gonna say. I
yeah
pulled it up just now. It looks great.
yeah, yeah, I'm very satisfied with it. So
Yeah, very clean. It's always scary changing it up once you've been rolling with one thing, for a while.
I try not to get too attached, because I do understand that you have to evolve with the space and you have to evolve with the times. But I
Mm,
knew that in the beginning that logo wasn't going to be our forever logo. I knew there was going to come
gotcha.
a point in time that we had to pivot, and I think we've done that very well. Obviously, we didn't change our name, so we can hang on to all the like the marketing that we've done previously, and we've just upgraded our logo, and that type of thing happens. We've improved upon our contracts from the beginning, and we've changed our logos and our branding, and it's just evolving with the times. We're, in my opinion, a serious project. We're undervalued, but we're slowly but surely clawing our way to the top, and more people are now becoming aware of what it is that we are doing at SquidGrow and all the utilities that are kind of under our umbrella, because we've got a lot of utilities that we've talked about that aren't really known. We've got utilities that my community knows that we're building that aren't live yet. But the biggest utility I think we've launched to date is probably SilentSwap is my favorite, and I think we just needed something to kind of convey a serious project, right? So SilentSwap doesn't have a token, it's just a raw utility. And the way that all of our utilities benefit the SquidGrow community is percentages of revenue that's generated on these platforms go back into the chart in the form of a buyback or liquidity injection. So as those utilities grow and gain traction, obviously they're a fee collecting platform. There's a fee there. Our community benefits from that as well. So that's the business model. I'll never have another token. Obviously, in the building stages, I had a lot of people, suggesting that, our utilities like SilentSwap have its own token and this, that, I have no time for another token. I have no desire to have another token. So, for me, I mean, the squid grows where it's at, and that's the center of our universe. So that comes first. And it's very similar to the way that we've structured the companies. Um, all of our utilities are registered separately as a different entity, not affiliated with SquidGrow at all. And the reason that we did it like that is talking about SilentSwap, obviously before the Tornado Cash ruling just came down, that kind of deemed that um, they were wrong in the ruling that they gave against Tornado Cash. But before that happened, like when it comes to privacy, if the regulatory structure changes and deems that type of thing, illegal, I didn't want to have my token so intertwined with that utility that it would essentially collapse not only that utility but my token. I've got it separate, so if I ever had to, I'd just shut that platform down and be able to preserve SquidGrow and just move on to the next. So we've made a big point to just try to keep everything separate, and I think we've done a great job with that. So that's kind of the model on the structure there.
Very nice, very nice. Also saw in the chat, it looks like Tina is down there in the chat, and everyone's getting hyped. Everyone loves Tina, so shout out to Tina.
Yeah,
Thanks
Tina's our
for
CMO. She's been a blessing, and she's been working on our marketing campaign for a while now for SilentSwap and SquidGrow. And I'm really excited to start seeing that stuff unfold. She's a very connected individual, and she's made some pretty big contacts for us. So definitely shout
nice.
out to her.
Yeah, shout out Tina. Yeah, she is a G. I will agree with you, Slayham. She is a G. So I want to double click on SilentSwap. That is one of the more interesting features and platforms that I've seen. And one of my favorite features is I'd assume this is one of the more popular ones amongst the average person. But the fact that if something goes wrong, you don't have to worry about. Like I don't know. Every time I do anything with crypto, if anything happens, if I get a phone call, if the app closes unexpectedly or something like that, I just like have no idea what happened. I'm like, did it go through? Did it not go through? Is my
Yeah.
money there? Like what? And it just doesn't do that on SilentSwap. It just like, well, I'll let you explain it. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and again, we are always working to improve what we have put out. But SilentSwap is a non-custodial platform that also has the healing capability there. So, um, with SilentSwap currently, because your wallets and your wallet and your child wallets have to sign the transactions because you're in possession of your funds. We can't do that for you. You have to keep the application open for the time being. So if you're utilizing it on your mobile phone, as you do have to keep the app open on your phone. If you are doing it on a computer, obviously you can minimize your tab and it still continues to work. But in the event that you're utilizing the application and your phone dies or blows up or whatever it might be, you close your app out, it stops the process, right? And you go back to the application, and we call it self-healing. You just refresh the page and it picks up exactly where it left off. But you're in custody of your assets the entire time, so it's not like your funds are sitting in a wallet that we control. They're within your child wallets, and those funds can be retrieved if you decide to pull the bailout on it if you wanted to. So, obviously we're gonna, continue to approve upon the platform now, but you are in custody of it. We do have that self-healing aspect of it. And, sometimes on the platform, it's always kind of, it's ever evolving. But if there's ever a time where you get an error on the platform, it pops up and it just says, you refresh the page, and you refresh the page, it does a self heal, it picks up where it left off and continues on. So none of that guessing game. Did my funds make it? Did it not make it? You're in possession of your funds the entire time, and that's what we set out to do. And we set out to have extremely cheap fees on the platform and extremely fast, and we've been able to do that. um, Average transactional time on our platform is anywhere from 7 to 20 minutes. Normally, it's on the lower side of that, but and we're pretty quick. Obviously, ETH right now is a little up there, but when we first started the process to move $10,000 on our platform on ETH, it was about $80. And our competitors, if you call them that, they're obviously a custodial version. It was costing about $600. So there's quite a bit of a difference there. Now, obviously, like I said, ETH price has gone up, but some of the other chains like Base and Binance and some of the others, you can move big money for relatively cheap. It's not um, it's not really a platform that you want to utilize for, like, say, $100 movement. I mean, obviously you can use the platform with whatever amount you want. The reason why I say that though is obviously we are a routing service. We don't have any contracts. So we're a routing service, and there's a bridge fee that's $60 on the platform. Doesn't matter if you're moving $20,000 or if you're moving $100. So if
Mm,
you're utilizing $100, that bridge fee is $60. So you're having a big percentage loss. So I say that to say, it's not super user friendly when it comes to very small amounts of money.
mm,
We have a limitation on the minimum amount that you can use. I think it's like $80, but it's going to cost you it's going to cost you $60 and some with just the bridge fee. Obviously, our fee is minimal on that, but we are a routing service, and the bridging, the decentralized non-custodial bridges that we are utilizing, their fee is $60. It doesn't matter the amount of money that you're using, so, or you're moving around. So that's something to keep in mind when utilizing the platform. But one thing I wanted to highlight on our platform, SilentSwap, is instead of just moving money from wallet A to wallet B, with our platform, you can split your assets up to 16 different wallets across 8 different blockchains in every asset that we support on there. So if you have $16,000, you can fund 16 different wallets with a variation of different um, tokens and different blockchains, and you can play with the outputs. It doesn't necessarily have to be an even split of 1,000 to every wallet. One of the latest features that we added onto the platform is you don't have to guess when you're moving ETH. Like if you're trying to move $500, you don't have to like try to guess the ETH amount to get 500. You can just flip it around, hit the USD, and type in the dollar amount, and it calculates it for you. So that was a feature that
yeah.
we had been meaning to add for some time, but we kind of overlooked it in the busyness of just trying to get this product out. But we've got that there, and we also just raised our limits on the platform for a couple different chains up to $50,000, and we're going to leave it there to start. We have the capabilities of raising it higher, but for now, some of the chains have $50,000 limits, and the others have $20,000 limits. But again, this is just V1. My ultimate goal is to be able to have very large whales transact on the platform in a single transaction, right? So that's the ultimate goal, and that's what we're working towards. So
Definitely, definitely. In regards to 2025 and beyond, just looming over the corner, or just looming around the corner, it feels like. And I know there's a ton of time in between now and Trump Day, but Trump Day is coming up real soon. There's been talk of pretty much day one, big changes coming in store for Bitcoin. It's possible he either hints at something. I guess he could totally send it on day one, or he could do nothing and kick the can down the road, like a lot of people are thinking. But
yeah.
either way, we've got 4 years of pretty good pro Bitcoin people. I mean, it seems like everyone that's close to Trump is in favor of Bitcoin. At the very least, Bitcoin. A lot of them crypto as well. Independently of what they have a relationship to Trump, a lot of them hold Bitcoin or they believe in it. So, what are your thoughts on what you guys are going to have to battle through over the next 4 years? How are you going to be surfing these waves?
Well, were you in attendance, Nashville?
I was for Bitcoin. I wasn't. I was literally 7 people away from getting in. I just heard. I just didn't get there
Ah,
in time
shit.
to see it
Okay.
live, but I was right
All right.
outside.
So you missed it. Yeah, I myself was there, and Trump spoke on a Bitcoin reserve, the possibility of having a Bitcoin reserve, and obviously we do know right now that they are onboarding crypto figures to help advise with crypto. It's my understanding that Chris from Crypto.com just got onboarded, and some other
Well,
big guys in the space. So they're definitely accumulating these people that have knowledge in crypto, obviously for a reason, right? They're gonna, I'm assuming, utilize these people to be, to help advise them on, how to navigate the crypto space, because obviously you can be pro crypto and not really know anything really about it. But I think with the new administration coming in, with the Trump administration, I think it's definitely a more crypto friendly environment, and it's got me feeling really good about at least the next 4 years in regards to
yeah,
crypto, because it got real shitty for a while under the last administration. You see all these exchanges moving their licensing out of the country and no longer allowing USA citizens to have access to these exchanges because of the regulatory scrutiny that they're going under. And I think the new administration realizes that there's a lot of benefit to having crypto involved in the United States, and it can definitely um, it can definitely help generate, positive momentum for us. And if they get involved in a certain way, it could be a lucrative thing for them as well, especially if they start giving tax breaks and so on and so forth, like some states like Texas is doing. Um, so I'm just really looking forward to the positive change. It's going to be a fresh breath of air, and I'm just excited. I mean, it could be a scenario where nothing happens day one. It could be a scenario where he sends it, like you said, day one, or maybe it's a couple of months down the road. But I think that we have no reason to doubt his support. And I think based on what he's done for us previously, he's done an incredible job. He's a businessman, so he understands, the business side of things. And I think that, he sees it as a benefit to wanting to keep, mining in the States instead of forcing everybody out of country. And the big support, I mean, there's people that argue that, crypto Twitter is kind of what moved the election in the direction that it went with him. So, whether that's true or not, I don't think that's been determined yet. But, he's got a big following base when it comes to the crypto community. And, I don't believe that he's going to let us down.
Yeah, I certainly hope not. I can't imagine he would either. I also saw a couple comments down there as well from some of the SquidGrow community. By the way, shout out to all of them out there. In terms of partnerships, what are some of the bigger ones? I know we love all the partnerships. We'll just put that
Yeah.
one out there. We love all the partnerships, but there's big, there's some big partnerships you guys have had, and we'll just say big in terms of integration. They're important
Yeah.
partnerships. They make sense,
Yeah.
complementary things like that. What are some of the ones that come to mind that you've been excited about? Are there any that are cooking, and are there any you're looking for actively, you just haven't found the right partner for?
Yeah, we're always looking for partnerships and we're always cooking. Thanks to Tina. She's been great as far as, getting us in contact with different builders in the space that we could mutually benefit one another. But the talking about SilentSwap, the two partnerships that we've currently announced is Zebu. It's a payment processing protocol. They've done over 4.5 billion in volume. And so we partnered with them. We partnered with them a couple months, and we came across them in Austin, Texas, at Consensus, and kind of sidebarred the conversation and decided that we were going to make it official. So that was our first partnership, and then just very recently we partnered with SquidRouter, and SquidRouter is a big aggregator in the space. They've done over 1.5 billion in volume as well. Now, when it comes to the partnerships and integrations, I'm going to try not to. Well, I won't be getting into the details of when integrations occur. That is something that needs to be thoroughly talked about between the partner and I. Obviously, I have the knowledge, but it's just not been made public yet. But there's definitely very exciting times ahead for us. And the fact that some of these big companies with big volume are partnering with us, either before we've even gone live or right as we have just gone live, I think is pretty major, and tells me at least that we're on to something, that these big people, these big companies are actually seeing that there is definitely a benefit. And then you kind of, as I said earlier, you got these big people in the space talking about privacy. I think the narrative is going to tee up perfectly for us, and for the rest of this year and 2025. People are starting to realize that crypto really is just not that private, and we've got a solution for that. And so I think we timed it perfect, and I think it's one of those things that with time, as we get our brand out there and we build that trust to the user base, we will start to grow more and more and more. Just yesterday we rolled over 1 million in volume on the platform, and
Wow.
yeah, I mean that's a milestone for us. Right now it's obviously not where I want it to be, but it's a start. You gotta crawl before you can stand. And I'm definitely very excited that we're kind of getting some slow traction. We've just based on the way that the volume is moving up, we're having a couple 100,000 move through the platform. And I mean that's a trust thing. You're giving money to a new product that just launched on the space, and you're taking a chance with it. So as more and more time goes on and more people utilize our platform and that word of mouth spreads, I think we can definitely get adopted. And there's lots of use cases for this platform, a lot of integrations, a lot of possibilities. So I'm definitely looking forward to what the future has ahead for us. I'm very excited for my community and how the revenue will benefit them. It's just very exciting times, man.
Definitely, man. Definitely see all the hype. People are definitely hyped. I mean, it's hard to keep up this momentum. You guys been building for a good little while now. It doesn't look like you're slowing down anytime soon. I'm curious on some of the things you picked up along the way. Have you, you've assumed you are the leader of the pack. So it's like, is that something that came natural to you? Is that something you even wanted to do necessarily, or you're like, hey, this is the way it's got to happen?
Like I said, I knew what it was I was signing up for, right? I never thought that this, would be easy. Going into this, I knew it was going to be a lot of time, a lot of dedication, a lot of frustration, a lot of emotion. And, I knew that going into it, and it's been what it is. I eat, sleep, and breathe what it is that I'm doing at Squid Grow. That comes first to me. Anybody that knows me personally knows that like I'm extremely hard to get a hold of now unless you message me on like Telegram. Um, but I'm dedicated and I've been blessed. I found a team that is just as dedicated as me, and it's a good fit. We struggle along the way, with different team members and kind of just finding our stride. But I think we're in a good place now, and we're just going to continue to push forward. Like I said, we're in a very unique position over a lot of projects. I self fund everything, so we're not dependent on volume to generate money to allow us to build. There will come a time that I start paying myself back, and obviously that happens through revenue generated on our utilities, right? That is the business model there. It's not the best business model, but I knew going into this there was going to be a period of at least 2 years that we're not going to be making any money, and I accepted it for what it was, and it's about leaving my mark on this space, right? So people say, people have these expectations in their life that when they get to a certain dollar amount, they've made it. And I can tell you from experience that just because you have, money in your account doesn't necessarily bring you happiness, right? You might go through your phase where you're just traveling and partying and indulging your loved ones and yourself, but that gets old. And for me, it was trying to find something of meaning. It's trying to leave my mark on the space better than I found it. For me, what it is we're doing here at Squid Grove is going to be my legacy. I want to be remembered for what it is that I've done in this space, and that's what I'm working for. And maybe I get to that point. Maybe I don't get to that point, but I'll never know unless I actually try and unless I truly dedicate my time, my energy, and efforts to that. So that is what we are working towards every day. So whether or not I'm sick, whether or not I'm tired, whatever it might be, my entire team continues to get up day in and day out and push on, and that's how it's done. And it's probably getting old at this point, but I like to say there's always somebody somewhere pounding coffee and energy drinks, attempting to outwork me, and I'm just not going to allow it to happen. So anybody that knows me knows that I'm reachable pretty much at all hours of the throughout the day and the night. So I'm just always around, and like I said, I always have what it is that I'm doing on my mind. So I'm working towards that goal, and I've got a lot of support on my side from family and stuff, and that definitely makes it a lot easier. Because it is stressful. There is a
Yeah.
lot of stress, but there's a lot of joy as well. So when we went live with just, for example, SilentSwap, there was a lot of joy that was brought to me. And then, when we rolled over 1 million in volume, that brought me a lot of joy. Actually, Shibtoshi, it was a Shibtoshi first. I did a live stream on my X account yesterday, second space I've ever done.
Woo!
And then I also partook in a celebratory cigar with my developers as well, which was also
Hey.
I'm not going to say like me as a person has never like smoked cigars, but Shibtoshi has never smoked a cigar. So, it was definitely a memorable moment. And, I'm just, we wouldn't be where we are today without the community. And, there's a lot of moving parts in that. So obviously with the accessibility that the team has, or the community has to the team, and the community members and even our mods day in and day out, answering questions, and the community members that also help answer questions. Like, it's just a lot of moving parts that have fit together so well. It's made us what we are today, and we are undervalued. But in our scenario, unfortunately, I think it's one of those situations where it's slow and steady. I wish that it was quick. I wish I could snap and I can't say those words, but I wish that instantly my community members are just on cloud nine. But we're going to continue to fight, and every time that we dig forward and maybe we're pushed back a couple steps, we continue to dig in and continue to push forward. So that's kind of what we are about over here at SquidGrow. So definitely exciting times.
Well, it hits different. I'll tell you what, it's different hearing you talk about your team now that I've joined a team in the past year. I mean, pretty much before Wolf, I joined in like January, I think, or February of this year. Prior to that, I was pretty much just doing independent work. And so I did all these podcasts and things with other founders and projects and companies, and they always talked about the team. One thing I noticed about you is you can literally feel the like the authentic, what's the word? Like gratefulness, I guess, for the team you have. And you mention it every time we've done a space. You always shout out the team. You give like a special shout to the developers as well. I know the developers. I can never do that as well. I think maybe we just have like a built-in
They
internal
they they
respect.
they put up with some stuff, man. I'll tell you what. Like, they definitely feel my stress more than anybody else on my team. So it's definitely a lot of respect to those guys, and a lot of respect to them. They were able to put their heads together and figure out, what we were told was unachievable. And it's only
Yeah.
unachievable until somebody has done it, and we have done it, and I'm guarding those secrets
Wow.
like there's no tomorrow, right? But definitely, everybody collectively, from the community to my developers to my core team, to my influencers, and it's a team effort, right? So it can't be done if you're missing one balance somewhere in that puzzle, things fall out of whack. And I think we have a pretty good balance, but we are always working to improve that, right? So it's just kind of everything's in harmony, and it's not necessarily been the easiest path. Like I said, there's a lot of times we make great progress only to get slid back. But when I was a kid and playing football, coach always would say, drop down, dig deep, and chop your feet, right? And that's kind of what I feel like we're doing. Even though we're getting pushed back, we're just making, putting all our energy into moving forward, and eventually we'll get it, and we make that stride and we break through. So that's what it's about for me. And I'm just blessed that I have a team and a community that see my vision and that have been in here or have been with us for the long haul, because it's not easy to find.
Yeah, definitely. And Action, big shout out to Action out there. Takes a special kind of human to stay humble even after you made it. Yeah, I'll tell you what, if I made a bunch of money from a Shiba, listen, I got actually into the crypto space from a meme coin. I got in because of Dogecoin, bought in like 2019 off a TikTok trend. 2 years later, my friend told me to re-download Robinhood, and I was like, oh my God, there's my liquidity. Dumped it back into the crypto markets just to lose it 3 months later, and that was my introduction to crypto. Here we are a few years later. So yeah, man, I mean, I agree with you. Like the meme coin is a great top of funnel way to get people in. And then there's something that hooks them. It's usually money, but there are a variety of different ways. I mean, people are building in the space, and I've found careers, lifelong friends, partners. Maybe you join a team like a SquidGrow or a Wolf or something like that. This is pretty much the land of opportunity. So, kind of as we come to a close here, we'd love for you to speak on that. Actually, like the opportunity that comes in this crypto world. Like, what is it that you think that people are missing? And maybe you can speak a little bit to the people out here in crypto land here, as well as the people who maybe need to give crypto a shot.
Well, when it comes to, I've met a lot of very humble people in this space. There's, I'd like to say that, I've made some good friendships in this space on this endeavor. I've also met a lot of bad actors as well. I'm not, obviously not above being taken advantage of, and that's happened to me quite often. I'm very trusting. So, in this space, you have to kind of find that balance of trust, because like I say, trust is earned, it's never given. And that's true for even people in my situation. But what I've learned in this space is, through all the noise, you can see, based on people's actions and how they carry themselves, the type of individual that they are. Like your company Wolf, action. I mean, there's many. You can just see how genuine people are. Aztecs, another very genuine individual. And people, there's two types of people in this space. There's the people that, I guess maybe three, but there's the people that are just there to extract value from you, and there's the people that are there to add value without getting anything in return. And there's a good balance in that regard, and you just kind of got to be mindful of the type of individuals that you're dealing with, because it's hard to, just said it easy. Trust is earned, not given. So it's just one of those things that you just have to be very careful on. But
Yeah.
when it comes to getting involved in crypto, I would just strongly suggest, to do your due diligence. Understand first what cryptocurrency is. Understand that there is a risk. Understand that it could, depending on the asset that you're getting involved with, it could be the equivalent of going to a casino and putting a bet on red or black on the roulette table. There is a lot of luck that's associated with this, at least in my personal opinion. I didn't invest into Shiba Inu because I had any inside knowledge. I invested into it for the sole purpose to acquire more than my 7 friends that brought it to me. That was the only reason. I didn't care what it did. I just wanted to, for bragging purposes, because sometimes I can be cocky. I just wanted to possess more than them. And that's also got me in a lot of bad situations with my buddy Huntsman. As we're fighting for top wallet, and then we're obviously dumping loads of money into this, and then that project rugs and we both lose. But I say that to say, you have to do a certain level of due diligence in this space. You have to understand what it is that you are actually putting your money into. There's risks associated with it. And then there's also the level of, how do you store that crypto? Do you go the centralized exchange route, not your keys,
Mm.
not your crypto, get caught up in a situation like FTX where, hey, your account shows that you have money, but now you can't withdraw it? Or do you keep custody of it and download like a trust wallet, MetaMask, um, StrikeX wallet, or like a store your crypto in a ledger? It's a complicated situation, and you do have to kind of do what's best for you. But I definitely would recommend a level of due diligence. You have to understand what it is that you are doing. When I first got into Bitcoin in 2011, I went home. I acquired some Bitcoin. I lost it on the poker tables. But when I got home, I started doing my due diligence. I started reading that white paper. I started reading the forums. I started trying to understand what it was that this digital asset that I could not possess was actually all about. And so you just have to have a basic understanding. You should never really just, buy something because somebody tells you to do so. You should always take some time to do some due diligence. And I understand crypto moves very quick, so sometimes you don't have the
Yeah,
luxury of doing that, but you have to at least understand the basic risks of being involved in crypto. So if you have that under wraps, then you can kind of have better judgment.
definitely, definitely. Yeah, I would echo that sentiment as well. For me, understanding Bitcoin gave me a layer of conviction I did not have last cycle. That was very helpful. The Bitcoin white paper, and then just sitting in a. I mean, we host Bitcoin spaces, so I got the luxury of hosting the space and asking anything I wanted. But I just put myself in a room with 5 to 10 other experts, and I had them talk, and I just listened. So that was one
Soak
way I
it
was
up.
able to
Yep.
jump in. Yeah, absolutely. Spaces I highly recommend for anyone who wants to learn about a topic. Find people who talk about it and then just sit and listen. It's super helpful stuff. So, well, I was going to say, Shibtoshi, this has been an awesome conversation. I was going to say, if you wanted to leave us with any final announcements / call to action, update, something about SquidGrow or something you guys are cooking up, would love to let you wrap us up with that final point.
I just want to, take some time and thank you for having me on your show. Shout out to my community, Squid Grow.
Yeah,
As
shout
I've
out.
said many times, y'all make the project what it is. Day in and day out, y'all are there for us. Whether or not we're up, down, sideways, whether we're frustrated or having a bad day, y'all always have a way to, cheer us up in some way or another. Whether it's cracking Shibtoshi jokes in the chat, or talking about what it is you're doing for the holidays. Y'all are the lifeblood of the project, and I really appreciate it. Y'all are my motivation to get up day in and day out. So shout out out to y'all. To everybody else that hasn't yet heard of our project, I definitely recommend checking it out. And if you are cautious or conscious of privacy in the space, and you understand that crypto isn't as private as we were led to believe, definitely head over to SilentSwap.com. SilentSwap is a privacy cross-chain aggregator that is trustless, decentralized, and non-custodial. It's a very unique thing, and to my knowledge, it's the first of its kind. We have 2 security audits on it. We scored a perfect 10 with Hack-In, and we also have an audit with Certec. We have a United States legal opinion stating that we are compliant. We also implement OFAC and AML on the platform as well to ensure that we don't have any known bad actors transacting on our platform. And this is a revenue-based utility, although we are very competitive on our fees in regards to the custodial versions of this type of thing. Percentages of everything generated on the platform goes back to my community in a form of a buyback or and liquidity ejection. So even if you're not a community member, but you're interested in privacy, definitely go check it out. My community would be very appreciative of you doing that. Obviously, they benefit directly from anybody that utilizes the platform. So thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. And until next time, man, shout out to the SquidGrow community.
Shout out to the SquidGrow community. Couldn't think of a better way to sign off. Guys, make sure if you're not following SilentSwap, SquidGrow, and Shibtoshi, that's a mistake. If you're on YouTube, go to the description down below and click the follow on all 3 of them. If you're on Twitter or X, just literally go to the title and you can follow them super easily. So highly recommend that you turn on notifications as well, because I'm sure updates will be coming out. Shibtoshi, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate this conversation. It's been a fun time sitting down with you.
Hey, thank you, buddy. Thank you for the time. And until next time.
Until next time, have an amazing day, everyone. We'll see you later.